It is a genuine pleasure. It is a genuine pleasure to host panel Southeast Europe Energy Cooperation and Stability. I know it's 5 o'clock. We already passed actually 5 o'clock. It's end of the day. We are probably all impatient to wrap up the day, but I hope that this is going to be a great opportunity. We have a great panelist today that I would like to introduce right now. And let me start from Ms. Zsuzsanna Hargitai. Did I pronounce good? I was wondering, is it G or E? It's a regional director from Western Balkans, EBRD. Professor Yannis, Maniatis, Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Change from 2013 to 2015 from Greece. Sander van Rootselaar, that we remember from last year, and it's the Deputy Head of Communication from Turkstream, and George Ioannou, CEO of Energy Exchange Group. So if you don't mind all, I will start with Professor Maniatis. He's right now in the two conferences at the same time. And I would like to give him a floor in the first place so we can hear his views on this topic and maybe ask him a question or two if his agenda allows us. So, Professor Maniatis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vulovic. As it happens to many of us, we have two or even sometimes three parallel obligations to participate in this time.
Professor, I think you're on mute. Can you please unmute yourself?
No, I am okay.
Okay,
You
sorry.
Hear me?
No, now it's all good. Now it's all good.
Is it okay now?
Yes,
okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to participate, and thank you for giving me a priority because I participate in another meeting held in Thessaloniki about pandemic and its relationship with the climate crisis. So, thanks for the invitation. I want to thank Simon Tsomokos and the organizers. Hopefully that next year we will meet in Belgrade. One of my favorite mottos is that in unity there is strength, a saying which was first recorded in the ancient Greek poet Homer. And this saying is nowhere truer than in our region, because I think we all agree that the people of the Balkans have great potential as long as we ensure that our past differences become history, that now we focus together on a shared future. The past 20 years show that Balkan countries are increasingly cooperating to address shared challenges like energy shortages, pollution, transport, cross-border criminal activities. I note the work of the cooperation in Southeast Europe and of the Regional Cooperation Council. Many initiatives are backed by European institutions, and the instrument for pre-accession assistance provided the region with about 3 billion euros assistance during the period 2014-2020, specifically which promotes regional cooperation in various sectors. Greece strongly supports the integration of the Balkans with the European Union, and I am proud that I was personally involved in the governments which promoted landmark initiatives like Energy Community, the Thessaloniki Agenda for the Western Balkans, and the Agenda 2014. Now, the road to full integration has challenges, but progress is being made towards the region's European perspective. After all, EU companies lead investments in the Western Balkans. It's about 65% of foreign direct investment in the region. And last year, the European Union accounted for more than 69% of the region's total trade. Now, we must focus on promoting greater connections between societies and connectivity through infrastructure for energy security. Now, regarding energy security, the Western Balkans and the EU share in varying degrees, of course, similar challenges. To express things simply, we have an excessive dependence on imports and an excessive reliance on hydrocarbons, creating threats to our security and to our planet's sustainability. Today, I want to focus on the first fundamental challenge, overcoming import dependence, Serbian and Balkans access to the southern gas corridor. A steady flow of energy is vital for all our economies and societies. This is why it is crucial that we have access to competitive, affordable, and secure energy. The starting point to overcome problems related to this dependence today is the diversification of sources and routes, as we all know. The European Union's major policy initiative to achieve this is the Southern Gas Corridor. I was personally involved with the development of TAP, the pipeline project that opens the corridor transporting Azeri gas to markets in Europe. So I was extremely proud that last week TAP began its first commercial operations. TAP opens the way for Southeast Europe's access to the Southern Gas Corridor. And with TAP, the Western Balkans become a transit route for gas imports in the European Union, and I could say in four ways. One, TAP's gas reaches Europe via Greece and Albania, developing along the way Albania's gas market. The second is that TAP can provide an exit point to the potential Ionian Adriatic pipeline to link the markets in Croatia, Albania, Montenegro, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. The third is that TAP connects the other countries with the Greek network. And of course, fourth and crucially, it connects with the interconnector Greece-Bulgaria, the well-known IGB pipeline. IGB is now under construction and will be operational according to its timetable, will be operational by July 2021. We pushed hard to promote the IGB from its one side as a project of bilateral significance to a project of regional importance. And the IGB is indeed a catalyst for multi-state integration, providing access to the southern corridor and the real diversification of gas supplies. And it achieves this because it is the starting point of the so-called vertical corridor, connecting a network of existing and proposed natural gas infrastructure projects. And the second, it's the first time from diversified sources from Greece through Bulgaria to the greater northern region and western region. The impact IGB's impact will be maximized further by the Alexandroupolis FSRU, which is going to be completed, adding LNG supplies to the region's portfolio from the global market. One of the key projects that could be supplied is the Bulgaria-Serbia project, the IBS. And this project, together with the planned Serbia-Romania, and let's hope in a few years, the Serbia-Croatia interconnectors have direct benefits. The increased gas supply, boosting competition in line with the EU third energy package rules, greater inter-system connectivity and European integration, and of course, increased security with that diversified gas supply. During the Greek presidency, the European Union's Greek presidency in 2014, when I presided the Energy Council meetings, we consistently defended the right of our Southeast European countries for access via Greece to the Southern Gas Corridor. Serbia's connection to the Turkstream is also a strategic project and creates an alternative supply route for Russian gas. Over the last years, we see Serbia and other regional governments' commitments to cooperate to improve cross-border connections. Other examples include developing the LNG terminals at the Croatian island of Corp and in Albania, 5 interconnectors linking Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia and Bulgaria, and the proposed Ionian Adriatic pipeline. All these connections are the main precondition for implementation of EU standards and regulations to bring in investment and build a regional energy market. There is still a lot to do, aligned with the EU acquis. Work is continuing within the energy community. However, I salute the progress and political will for building connectivity. Before concluding, let me briefly refer to the second fundamental challenge, which is our reliance on hydrocarbons. Greece, like Serbia, has relied on lignite. The Western Balkans are Europe's most energy-intense countries. Continuing our efforts to achieve European climate targets, the current Greek government pledges to phase out coal-powered electricity production by 2028, in the coming 80 years. This must become a regional priority. Efforts are being made. I was pleased to read in the European Union's 2020 Serbia report about legislative progress in this respect. There is huge potential for more. The two areas where the Western Balkans have indigenous potential and can derive benefits from cross-border integration are renewables and energy efficiency. A new report by the IRENA agency estimates that within the next 10 years, the economies of Central and Southeastern Europe could cover 30% of energy demand cost-effectively with renewables. The renewables roadmap of the Central and Southeastern Europe Energy Connectivity Initiative shows that increasing renewables saves the region about 3 billion euros each year in energy costs in 2030. Finally, I have to mention the COVID-19 crisis. Because of the pandemic, the Commission estimates a possible drop of more than 6% of GDP in the region. Making investments in energy transition a priority can relieve the socioeconomic impact of COVID, stimulate green recovery, and accelerate the transformation of the energy sector. But no country can do this alone. A regional approach for finding large investments in the modernization of distribution systems and storage facilities yields the highest returns, and projects realized at the cross-border rather than just in national level bring economies of scale. Because, as I said at the start of my intervention, in unity there is strength. We need regional cooperation within a strong European Union. And to be complete, the European Union also needs Serbia and the Western Balkans. I look forward to deeper relations between Greece, Serbia, and the region. And I think we will not stop working until we achieve our common historical destiny. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I think it seems like you're in a rush. And I do receive signs from over here that I have to pass on to the next panelist. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're scheduled for the next conference as well.
Thanks.
I did have a few questions, but maybe we can leave it for next year when there is more, so let's say, like space, and maybe we can also meet in person, of course. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Ms. Hargitai, floors is yours. So let's see, I noticed over there during the professor's speech, you were approving and nodding when it comes to the renewable energy and when it comes to diversification and when it comes to actually the role of new investments through the reforms to new projects. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about EBRD perspective and EBRD strategies and policies when it comes to the cooperation among the countries in the region and the stability that comes with it.
Thank you very much, Aleksandar. And thank you, my fellow panelists, but all the audience that we might have kept, because I've got also a couple of messages to share with you. So EBRD to date has financed around 1.3 billion worth of investments in the Western Balkans, and in the coming 7 years, we can easily double it. Now, what is it that we are doing? We're financing investments, as I said, but we are also providing policy reform advice. The 6 countries of the Western Balkans, they are part of at least two important recently adopted agendas. One is the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, and all the 6 leaders signed up to it at the Sofia summit of the Berlin process. And also the energy sector features very strongly in the EU's economic and investment plan. So if I have 1 minute, I would convey very short messages. And then if you allow me another 3 minutes, I would elaborate on them.
Please go ahead.
So 7 extremely simple messages, and I very much hope that colleagues would also be nodding as I did during Professor Maniatis' presentation. Number 1, whatever we think, the carbon debate is over. So we are not discussing whether or how, it's over. Decisions are taken in Europe, and Western Balkan is part of Europe. Number 2, again, just to follow up on what Professor Maniatis was saying, coal is not cheap. So let us demystify it. Coal is not cheap even now. Number 2, or number 3 rather, in terms of messages, there is no future for coal in the European Union or in its neighborhood, meaning the Western Balkans. Number 4, renewables are cheap. And again, I'm happy to dwell on it. Number 5, that governments in the Western Balkans don't have to do all at once. Wane away from coal, develop infrastructure, interconnections, and renewables. It can be sequenced, it's plannable. Number 6, that Western Balkan countries must invest in their networks, domestic and international, both in power and in gas. And number 7 message is that we consider at EBRD that gas is important. A very important transition fuel in the country's transition, 5 out of the 6 Western Balkan countries from coal to a greener future. Gas investments are possible, but let us face it, it's challenging because the tide is turning. So let us make decision fast. Any such investments have to be what we call aligned with the Paris Agreement. Now, the good news is that EBRD can help. Decarbonization and carbon debate is over. Just to illustrate, again, as the audience would know, fellow panelists definitely know, that the European Union adopted a net zero target for emissions to be achieved by 2050. China adopted a net zero target to be achieved by 2060, with a peak in emissions in 2030. But it's not just about countries, and the list is long. The issue is, and again, attracting the attention of audience from Serbia, that this is also the decision of corporations. So Shell wants to go net zero emitting by 2050. Volkswagen wants to reach it also by 2050. So whoever is investing in our countries in the Western Balkans will be looking at green certificates, will be looking at the source of their energy all along. Now, coal, as I said, is not cheap, but it might look cheap. It might look cheap because it's now fully depreciated, the related assets, and there are no externalities included. But mining, as we are speaking about it now, is expensive. Again, we can discuss how much subsidy coal mines are receiving now. Mining is difficult because it's getting more complicated and dirty. And coal-fired power plants are very expensive, especially if we take into account the externalities. Carbon has a cost, whether it's imposed by governments like Montenegro has imposed it, or someone else will impose it, like the carbon border tax that is forthcoming from the European Union. So the question that the governments should ask, at least 4 out of now of the 6 Western Balkan governments, whether they want to commit their consumers, corporates and retail consumers alike, to the most expensive power in Europe generated by coal. So who wants to be the last to close coal plants? We have just heard from Professor Maniatis that Greece has decided to close the last coal-fired power plant by end 2027. Poland commits to close the last one to 2049, the rest of Europe 2025, pardon, with the exception of Germany, which commits to shut down the last coal-fired plant in 2038. So it's time for us to give another thought what new coal-fired power plants we want to invest in. Solar is becoming ever cheaper, and whoever doubts it, I'm happy to share data from Portugal through Albania to Armenia or Egypt. But the good news is that none of those data would come from feed-in tariffs. All investors offer long-term price certainty, either a fixed power purchase agreement or a contract for difference kind of structure. And again, the trend is to tender competitively. Albania has just issued now the second tender for solar capacity. What about gas? So, okay, 1/3 of CO2 emissions of coal, that's already an advantage, but let's face it, it still emits. So EBRD's energy strategy that is valid until the end of 2023 says we can invest in gas where it is consistent with a low carbon trajectory, including testing against shadow carbon price. But there is growing concern among stakeholders whether this approach is consistent with a net zero world or whether EBRD is additional. So again, we are building up a narrative, and I appeal for the support of governments from the Western Balkans, how investments in gas can work against the narrative of committing to stop generating coal-fired power from coal-fired power plants. So we can think together with governments, discreetly, but with very well evidenced strategies. What should be the country's climate and energy strategy? We can help, as we have been doing, with launching renewable auctions. We can invest in networks. We can also help with just transition for the coal regions. And it seems we can probably help you invest in gas, but the decisions have to come quickly. I'm very happy to answer any further questions. Thank you very much, Aleksandar.
Thank you, Ms. Hargitai. Very interesting speech. I'm also specifically intrigued about the solar plants and what you mentioned, that they're actually examples, because I used to be in a wind farm development industry. I was developer for more than 6 years, and I developed 3 wind farms in Serbia. So it's very interesting to see actually, can plants survive and be profitable without a feed-in tariff? Well, maybe later on.
Later on, let's revisit this issue. I think we shall have other questions on that, but I noted it down.
Okay, thank you very much. So now maybe we can pass to Sander and talk a little bit about the Turkstream. Professor Maniatis talked a lot about the TAP. So now let's see your perspective about the Turkstream and the need for collaboration between the companies and the countries as well.
Turkstream is actually in a similar position as TAP. It's an additional import route of natural gas towards Europe, and eventually, having more options for import creates more security of supply and also lower gas prices for the end consumers. So these are all clear benefits for Serbia, for Bulgaria, Greece, and actually all countries in the Balkan region. Turkstream itself has started operations in January this year. Firstly, with supplying natural gas to Turkey and limited quantities to Bulgaria as well. But now other nations are stepping up their efforts to develop their own domestic pipeline infrastructure. So in Bulgaria, Bulgartransgaz announced earlier this month that they have finalized their pipeline system, so the extension of Turkstream called Balkan Stream, And in Serbia, the pipes are in the ground already as well. So everybody is playing their own role in this big gas infrastructure puzzle. And so eventually this will lead to the operations of Balkans and scaling up the capacity of Turkstream. So the system itself, crossing the Black Sea to Turkey, has a capacity of 31.5 billion cubic meters. Half of it is destined for the Turkish market, and the other half for European consumers. If you look at the Balkan region, including Serbia, and what the previous speaker highlighted as well, there's a dominance of coal in the energy mix. So not only from a carbon from a carbon emissions perspective, it's important to phase out coal, but also for a public health perspective. The amount of pollutants in the air, especially in larger cities like Sofia, but also in Belgrade, is damaging for health, and it results in lesser lifetime expectancy for the residents. So this transition towards renewables, but first phasing out coal and looking for cleaner alternatives, that's clearly in line with European policies, and it's something that countries really cannot wait to do. Having more options in import streams for example with TANAP and with TAP, and also Turkstream coming on stream in Bulgaria and the Balkan region. There's also the alternative of LNG. So we've seen the amount of LNG coming to the European market increase. For example, coming from the United States. And with the current situation where there is an oversupply of natural gas, LNG is seen as an attractive alternative because it can be purchased in the spot market. There is a large difference in the carbon footprint, though, if you compare LNG with pipeline gas. So the difference, depending on the producer, is between 60 and 170% higher carbon emissions of LNG compared to pipeline gas. This difference is mainly explained by the process of liquefying the gas, so bringing it to an extremely low temperature in order to transport it by boat. And for certain countries, for example, in Australia, but also in the United States, the production method has a high carbon footprint. It's really carbon intensive because of the process of fracking. So there's a lot of energy required to actually produce the gas. Therefore, in Europe, it's not only important to look at the pricing of the natural gas, but also look at the carbon footprint over the entire life cycle of natural gas. That should be taken into consideration. A lot of these individual gas projects have already been mentioned. The interconnectivity between Greece and Bulgaria, interconnectivity between Bulgaria and Serbia. This all helps to make sure that gas flows to the region where it's required. And that's, it's actually a big compliment to the European Union that all this interconnectivity is created increasing security of supply, and also in the combat to energy poverty, which is still an issue in the Balkan region. Thank you. I'll take any questions if they are there already.
Well, thank you very much, Sander. I'm receiving the signs over here that I have to pass on the floor to George Ioannou from the Energy Exchange Group. We have, let's say, like 10 minutes or so. So let's give George floor as well.
Thank you very much, Aleksandar. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation, and I have to congratulate all the speakers that I have heard up to now for the very acute and interesting statements concerning the possibilities of cooperation and interaction among the Southeast European countries that in the last, let's say, 6 or 8 months, we have been in the center of many interesting, I would say, political interactions, in a sense. I would touch upon a few things that are interesting for Southeastern Europe concerning, at the beginning, the electricity market, because I come from the energy exchange, and the first steps focuses on electricity. So we are living through interesting times. We have embarked on a journey that has led us to the implementation of the target model after many, many years and many delays, but we are here. We have done it, and it works, I would dare to say, perfectly, and against all odds that required a lot of time for testing, etc. The target model is on. And it's the basis for interaction in the electricity market among the countries of the Balkans and beyond. For us, it is a unique development that we're looking forward to link it to the cooperation with our neighboring countries. And how will that happen? It will happen through the market coupling. The market coupling is coming. We're confident about that. We're looking forward to the steps that will lead us in this transition. And we want all the neighbors to be part of this effort. The first step will be with Italy. The next step will be with Bulgaria. And we're looking forward to all of this happening and realizing a transition that is important, extremely important for the Balkan region. So number one is target model, number two is market coupling, and then the major issue that was raised, that was underlined by previous speakers as well, is interconnections. How do we expand these capacities and include them in the new model through implicit allocation that basically allows for the optimization of the whole process, which is something that doesn't happen today, but it's something that will happen in the future, that has happened in the rest of Europe, and has increased the belief in this market. We want this to happen. It will happen. And there are some contracts that have already been signed with Bulgaria, with 600 megawatts. We hope something to happen with Italy. We believe that what will happen with Eurasia and Cyprus, it's something that will be realized because this will bring true liquidity to the market, something that is missing from the market And then it would translate Western Balkans from a corner of Europe into a central port of what is happening with respect to electricity. I strongly believe that we can do it, and it's one of the major cornerstones for potential cooperation and interaction. I want to touch upon something that is extremely important, and it was raised by previous speakers as well, and that's gas, natural gas. In Greece here, in the summer, we will have a trading platform developed by the Hellenic Energy Exchange. We believe that this platform could be a basis for things to happen in the future. And that's something that relates to the developments in our area. We have TAP, we have the increase of the capacity of Revithoussa, entry point for LNG in the Balkans. We have Alexandroupolis and the FSRU, which changes the way the network is structured. And we have the potential, not TAP, but the potential of Eurasia that will be a game changer. So things are moving in a direction that secures many perspectives for multiple players in the area and creates the environment for interaction, cooperation, and true friendship, I would say, among all the Balkan countries. And as I conclude this statement, because it's 6:59, and I want to be very, very acute with respect to time, is we want to forget Balkanization. We want to leave it in the past. It was all about differences.
And George, I believe you're on mute right now, maybe.
Right?
Now it's
I
better.
want to go back to Balkanization, and I said, we don't want to go to Balkanization. We want to move to something that is cooperation, interaction, and future of all the Balkan countries. And I believe that since it's about the Belgrade summit today, it's center of the Western Balkans. And you have to capitalize on that. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope I conveyed many messages concerning what are the things that are happening in Greece and how they can, let's say, be infused to what is happening in the Western Balkans in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I have a question for all of you. In order to have a better energy cooperation that will lead to the stability, do you believe that the initiative for better cooperation should come up from the government or for the market itself? Or is it a mix of both? Because now we are talking about the need for the better cooperation. So who's going to be the one that's going to be actually trigger that? Will be the government officials? Will be the lending banks? Will be the market itself? So maybe to start from you, Zsuzsanna, if you don't mind.
Easy question. Look, my take is that it will have to come from the governments. Energy is a regulated industry. A lot of us talked about interconnections, market regulations, market coupling. So the governments will be pushed, hopefully also by power utilities as well as private investors. And we shall nudge and advise as international financial institutions, or as the case is, the Energy Community Secretariat based on the Energy Community Treaty. That's my take.
Okay. Thank you. What's your opinion on this subject, Sander?
Well, in fact, governments are already really involved in development of the infrastructure. Most of the domestic pipeline operators, so I'm now speaking about the gas industry where we are active. The government are the main shareholders of these companies. So that's also a way to influence how the infrastructure is developed. So I fully agree with Zsuzsanna that governments play a crucial role.
Okay, thank you, Senator. George, what will be your opinion on this? As you mentioned, you're a little bit, let's like you're focusing on the market as a force that will actually trigger so many changes. So do you also believe that the government should be the one that's going to trigger better cooperation, or the market can have impact as well?
Well, I will have to support what I said. So, but from one side, yes, the energy, electricity is very, very heavily regulated. So we have to take that into account. On the other hand, there are a lot of developments that give a boost to market forces. And we have to take that into consideration, because we're gonna see things that come from the market that were so unexpected, so different from what is the definite, the regular view, that we have to be ready for that. So I would agree, governments will play a pivotal role, and they should be aware of new things that are coming, and they should not be surprised by new realities.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, George. I believe we came to the end of the panel. And do you have any questions that you like to, let's say, like ask among each others, or should I wrap it up and close up the session? I'm receiving
Aleksandar, I think we could continue this discussion forever, but I'm conscious that the next panel is up. So look, we'll take it offline with Sander and George and discuss, including your question about whether feed-in tariffs are still needed or not.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I do have it.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.